Today on Lightning Bugs.
If I'm out on stage improvising, which I've been many, many times, all you're thinking about is finishing that, getting it over the line, making it good, turning it around. You are not aware of the audience. You're trying to save your ass. Mm-hmm. When I'm doing something that I know inside out, I can tell you the speed that the woman in the fourth row is breathing. I can tell you who touched their forehead, because that's so much a part of me that I'm really in the room. So it ends up being kind of the opposite of what you'd think. Mm-hmm. The more you're improvising, the more you're alone. And the more you're rote, the more you're in the room with the people.
Hi, if you're enjoying listening to Lightning Bugs, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps a lot.
Hi, thank you for watching my podcast. If you've been enjoying the podcast, let us know how we're doing. Go to Lightning Bugs on Apple Podcasts and leave us a review with your thoughts. Or if you have any ideas for guests, we want to hear from you. So leave us that. Leave us your suggestions on Apple Podcast reviews.
My guest today is magician, author, and TV personality Penn Jillette. He's best known for his work with fellow magician Raymond Joseph Teller as half of the team Penn and Teller. In 2020, Penn and Teller celebrated 45 years of professional partnership. Impressive. The pair have redefined the genre of magic and have invented their very own distinct niche of comedy. Their record-breaking show at the Rio in Las Vegas is still running, so you can and should go check it out. Penn has authored 8 published books, including New York Times bestseller God No, Signs You May Already Be an Atheist, and Other Magical Tales. Penn and Teller's TV show Fool Us is in its 8th season. They previously had a show on Showtime called Penn and Teller Bullshit, which was nominated for 13 Emmys and was the longest-running series in the history of the network. And be sure to check out Penn's podcast, Penn Sunday School, on all streaming platforms. Penn has accomplished more than can be covered in any intro, and yet today's interview will certainly be recognized as the pinnacle of his career. Anyway, let's talk about creativity with Penn Jillette.
Oh my goodness gracious, 8 books? Is that true? The most important part of writing a book is don't let Springsteen's Dancing in the Dark get into your head, or you will loop with, I'm just sitting around here trying to write this book. I'm just sitting around here trying to write this book. That is a problem that happens to me, is that I get pop songs in my head that have a phrase that exactly represents what I'm doing. And often I don't remember the antecedent. So I'm walking around singing Dancing in the Dark and don't realize it's because I'm trying to write a book.
Do you always have music in your head?
Always. And
me too.
I will have, I'll be walking around going arrows of neon and flashing marquees out of Main Street and go, why am I doing that? Oh, because I saw a bottle of vitamin C 3 minutes ago. So I was thinking living on reds and vitamin C and cocaine, and that will stay in my head until something else does it. Often it is like an oracle, like a prophetic dream. Like I will have positively 4th Street come into my head, because then I'll realize later I'm getting angry at the person I'm talking to. But I won't know that at the time. Yeah.
That's songwriting to me. Since I've been a kid, I don't think I've had a moment of my life that didn't have music running through it. And often it comes from a word. Like if someone says something like mezzanine, then I'm walking around going mezzanine, 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 mezzanine. Eventually my brain probably gets bored and I add something to it.
Yeah, well, then you got a triplet, and then you got to decide whether you're in 6/8 or whether you're in 12/8, right?
Yeah, and you're a musician. I saw you playing bass as I was doing my Penn research. You're a good bassist.
Oh, thank you, thank you. It was a very strange thing. There were 2 things that I always, many things, but 2 that were really like little stones in my shoe. I didn't really play an instrument. I mean, I played punk bass, but I didn't really read, and I never really dug in. and I didn't speak a language other than a slight grasp of English, and I felt that was. Everybody told me those were two important things, and for some reason, two things happened kind of simultaneously. One, I was on a show with the Smothers Brothers, and the gag we did was I did a bit with Tommy, and Teller did a bit with Dickie. So I was doing Boil That Cabbage Down, and I had to play the upright bass. And so I got Dickie, Dick Smothers upright bass, and I had to learn just the 1 and 5, 2 chords, and had to learn to sing and play the bass with Tommy. So a tremendous bass player gave me this one lesson. And when painters talk about painting, they often talk about, very separate from the images, they'll talk about enjoying the sensuality of having paint on their hands,
Yeah.
And I know guitar players or piano players who talk about the enjoyment of touching the instrument,
Yeah.
And many authors enjoy longhand. They just enjoy that. Never mind the content, but the medium. And I never felt that. I've always hated things. I just dislike things. I never liked typewriters. I never liked anything. I didn't like records. I don't like books. I like the information. But I touched that bass, and it against my body and the feel of the size of it, it felt really good. And then right along with that, my mom died. And I'm a mama's boy, very close to my mom. And for some reason, and I've never been able to connect this, but I know it's tied in. I wanted to start to learn something that I knew I couldn't be best at. When I started juggling, when I started doing magic, when I started doing comedy, when I started writing, I didn't know I wouldn't be the best at it. We found out I wouldn't be the best at it, but I didn't know when I started.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, it just seemed really vitally important to start something that I couldn't win.
That's really interesting.
And it was,
I love that.
I was in tremendous grief, and I didn't want to talk to anybody. So I brought in an incredible bass teacher, and he said, what do you want to learn? And I said, teach me like I'm a 9-year-old that's just starting.
Yeah.
And it was almost slipping slightly for a few months, into mental illness. I practiced till my fingers bled all the time.
Yeah.
And as you've talked about, practice just scales and just hardcore practice. And I've never had a good ear for intonation. So playing a fretless instrument was crazy.
Yeah.
But I wanted to do that. There are some studies that say after 45, you can't improve your intonation, which was another reason I started at 45, because I wanted to show I could improve my intonation.
Yeah.
And I then hired a incredible piano player, Mike Jones, who's an incredible bebop player, to do the pre-show. And I said, I get some good news and bad news. The good news is you're a jazz musician who will have a steady gig. The bad news is you'll be playing with me.
Yeah.
And so for an hour before the show, as our own pre-show, I went out and played the bass. And in a duo. And I started out terrible. And that was 20 years ago. And now I am good enough to be your fourth call upright jazz bass player in Vegas. I can read, I can play, I can solo. I am in no way good, but in music, you've got two goals. First goal, not to be noticed. Second goal, to be noticed. I've accomplished that first goal, and I can actually play. And then during the lockdown, I started studying Spanish. So I think I will hit 70 years old as someone who has a second language and can play a musical instrument.
Man, there's so much in what you said that's really interesting to me as a musician. I mean, what I noticed about your playing is that you're getting a really basic thing really right that a lot of players and I don't think kids could get right immediately, which is you're giving the impression that you've got it under control. Like I'm hearing what I want to hear. Like I'm hearing what I want to hear. And I put I didn't put a critical ear to it, but I started to listen a little more carefully, wondering how long you had played. And my guess was you'd played since you could walk. So I thought I would ask you about that. So you're doing that, but like there's a confidence and you're telling the audience there's a bassist, the notes are sustaining, they're more or less in tune, and this is upright bass. Now go on to the next thing and pay attention to that. And I'm believing it. Like I really like what you're doing. It's got a great intention. Yeah. I guess intention is the way to say that.
And during the lockdown, I went back and practiced a lot, and came back from the lockdown a little bit improved. My soloing got a little better. My intonation got a little better.
Yeah, I think your intonation is damn good.
I do not have. Well, I was going to say natural talent. There's a lot of studies that dispute that because people in China with a tonal-based language, a much larger percentage of them have what we call perfect pitch or accurate tonal memory, and so it's not innate unless it's riding along in a racial gene. Mm-hmm. But I've always had a lot of trouble with intonation. So the question many people asked was, why would you pick a fretless instrument? My answer was, that's the reason.
Right.
I have a very bad visual memory, which is one of the reasons I keep art all around me too, to try to make up for that.
Well, first of all, I think your intonation sounds really good, and it's funny that some of the stuff you're talking about here, I've got little sticky notes to things that I just wanted to ask you, and they almost have nothing to do with, I don't know, like one is about everything I've seen you do, nothing condescends and underestimates the intelligence of the audience, the people you're hearing, who are hearing what you're saying and seeing what you're doing. Does that seem right to you?
That is, you have put your finger on the prime directive of Penn and Teller. Jerry Seinfeld, who 30 years ago said I could have this line and credit it to myself, but I still credit it to Jerry Seinfeld, said all of magic is, here's a quarter, now it's gone, you're a jerk, now it's back, you're an asshole, show's over. Because magic, culturally, it may be broader than the United States, but let's talk United States. Culturally is a white boys thing. That has changed in the 21st century, and I will take a little bit of credit because I certainly pushed hard, but up till the end of the 20th century, it was 12-year-old boys. And so magic brought with it the insecurities and hatreds of a 12-year-old white boy, an outsider white boy, a different kind of neurosis than rock and roll brought, a different kind of neurosis than country music brought, a different kind of neurosis than painting brought. And magic was the wanting to get over on somebody, wanting to say, I know something you don't, ha, ha, ha. Mm-hmm. And that meant that I hated magic with a passion. When I would turn in, I was a juggler, and when I would tune into the variety shows that were on TV when I was very young, like Hollywood Palace and so on, I would tune in to see the Turtles and the Who and Zeppelin. Yeah. And then there'd be some dipshit, magician that I really, really didn't like. I really didn't like the attitude, and I really didn't like, as I've said many times, a greasy guy in a tux with a lot of birds torturing women in front of Mylar to bad small dick white boy rip off Motown music. I really disliked that. And I also had a real dislike for the idea of adults lying to children. Really was offended by that.
Yeah.
And then I met Teller, and Teller said really a sentence that seemed as weird to me as saying the earth was flat. He said, magic is essentially an intellectual art form. You have to think about it in a way that you don't need to think about music. And you don't need to think about art. You need to think about magic. You need to think what the rules of the universe are supposed to be. So really the opposite of the way people perceive magic. And then Teller and I started with an intellectual premise. Can you do magic without insulting the intelligence of the audience?
Awesome.
Can you do it where the performer and the audience are on the same level?
Right. That's what I get out of it. Yeah.
And that was the mission statement of Penn and Teller. And it's amazing how much that radiates, it comes into how the tricks are done. It comes into what the patter is. It comes into how you light it.
Yeah.
It comes into how you stand. It really is everything, and to break out of that magic mold, you don't have a guitar player finish a solo, with the possible exception of Eddie Van Halen, and go, ha ha, I can do that, you can't.
Right.
Because it's a higher plane. We are supposed to believe we are together enjoying that moment of music. And magic, as a rule, didn't have that. Or if they had it, it was a secondary byproduct. So I think one of my advantages in magic is that I came to it late. My real interest in magic didn't come till I met Teller, and I was 19 years old. And I think that difference between 12 and 19 is enormous. I mean, all I'm saying is you've gotten laid multiple times.
Right. Well, I didn't actually see you talking about this before, but that was the thing that struck me watching through your stuff, is that this environment is an environment that just sort of inherently says we're all in the same room together. And I think that's really impressive, because as a songwriter, you can create the impression that a songwriter or singer is discovering something at the same time as the audience. But by necessity, you must withhold a little bit, and we all know that. So I think it's an incredible really feat to keep everyone feeling not spoken down to. And it makes me think something you said earlier. It makes me just curious. If you think all people are basically inherently born with the same general intelligence, and that depending on how you grow up, like a little more towards I guess the nurture idea of things. Do you see most people as intelligent, and some just got rerouted to being a dummy because of the way they grew up?
I don't think we can ignore the luck of the genetic draw.
Yeah.
I've met smart people. I knew Richard Feynman fairly well. I know Richard Dawkins. I know Lawrence Krauss. I know Rob Pike, scientist at Google. And, since they were 5 years old, you could put 2 3-digit numbers in front of them and they could multiply them together.
Right.
And they can take huge amounts of information. For instance, my friend Rob Pike has never forgotten a number, which is beyond astonishing. He knows my PIN from the ATM because he happened to be glancing when I punched it in 35 years ago.
Those are certainly talents and tools that are real specific,
And I also think that, I'm 6'7", and I'm considered tall, but then again, I've met and worked with Shaq O'Neal. Right. So I think those kinds of things, and I've seen how symmetrical Tom Cruise's face is. There are certainly differences that we can't deny. I think that, my feeling is you look at the hand you're dealt and you kind of say, how do I play this? When I was in high school, I desperately wanted to be a musician. But when I looked at the hand I was dealt, there were other students in my high school who had better skills at music than I did.
Yeah.
And it's a basic truth that if you're going into the arts, you probably should be the best at that in your high school. Probably also true for sports, but I know nothing about that, And I was the funniest kid in my high school. That was easy, and but I wasn't the best musician. There's also another thing about music that drives me crazy. This comes a little bit from the Rostock Manifesto, which the Residents, an avant-garde group in San Francisco, live by the Rostock Manifesto. If you don't like supermarket music, for Christ's sake, start making supermarket music. I really, really love the Velvet Underground. I really, really love the Mothers, and I really, really love Bob Dylan. And I would look at those three and say, what am I going to do better than they're doing?
Right.
It's the big question of Guns N' Roses. If Guns N' Roses love the Stones so much, why don't they leave the Stones be? Because the Stones are doing a fine job at Guns N' Roses.
Right. No.
And I think that my feeling about music was everything I can contribute here, other people are doing better. Now, Magic, on the other hand, there was a lot of stuff I didn't like. Right. Almost all of it I didn't like. So, hey, there I can make some progress. So every time I hear people talk about loving the field they're going into, I always go, yeah, but you got to have something you don't love about it. Or why are you there? I mean, I would be perfectly happy if my whole career were Bob Dylan's career. I can sit back and go, good, he's done that. And it's not like I listened to, Rowdy Ways, the new record, and go, yeah, I could have done this a little better.
Right.
That thought doesn't cross my mind. I watch Magic acts, I go, that you could clean that up. I watch comedy and go, you could clean that up. I listen to Bob Dylan and go, I pass.
Well, yeah, I know. That's why, like, when people ask who your influences are in an interview as a musician, I don't know what to tell them, because I have a feeling most influences are accidental. Like, it could be some Burger King commercial, or it could be a chant or something that I don't really think about or like. I know that my inspirations, I know what they are, and I know I wanted to sound nothing like them because they did it, and I couldn't do it as well. I changed every note not to sound like someone who I respected.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. You might have to in adolescence copy it. Like, I did memorize the Lenny Bruce records. I did memorize the George Carlin records.
Yeah.
You may have to do that. And it always amazes me when someone doesn't move away from that stage. You memorize it, and then you go, I'm never going to do that again.
Yeah, it is immature. It's like they didn't stop playing with their mashed potatoes with their hands or something.
Right. Yeah.
It's like you got to move. Definitely got to move on. But when you
can play the piano stuff of the people you love. You just don't.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not. Well, I don't know. I guess maybe some of it's ego too. I don't want to be exactly compared or look like a ripoff, you know.
And you're even okay to say it's all ego. You don't want to, you don't want to be a cover band. You could want to be a cover band, but that's not what you were choosing.
Yeah, I remember when opening up for Billy Joel one time and heard him singing his ass off in sound check, came up to the stage, and it's a guy he hired who sounds just like him, and he does the sound checks all day with the band.
Oh, that's fabulous.
It's an amazing thing. This guy has a career now doing that.
Oh, that's fabulous. Oh, that is so good. And then, we do have all the examples. Now there's more than one of tribute bands that have gotten hired into the real band.
Right. Absolutely.
Judas Priest and so on, which is just so psychedelic.
Well, it's like when you act one of those shows that says featuring in parentheses, featuring original members of, of Penn and Teller. Well, I just figured if you were like, I would just wondered what your attitude was about people and dummies and smart people. If your act and your career and your expression is predicated on never speaking down to people, I figure that shows a lot of faith in people's intelligence.
Well, I'm a pathological optimist, and the past 5 years have certainly tested those of us who are optimistic. But I don't know how much control one has over that. My dad was always happy, even though he had a shitty job, and even though he had some bad things dealt to him. He was making a joke when he found out he was going blind. My mother was always more down and quieter and a little bit toward, I don't want to use clinical terms incorrectly, but towards depression. But I mean that I guess I'll use sadness because you want to be colloquial. And I have friends who are rosy and friends who are sad. And I don't know how much control we have over that, but I know that for the most part, I seem to be optimistic, and that spreads over into I expect to be understood when I go on stage, and I'm not disappointed. There's all those cynical, horrible things that you never go broke, underestimating the American public, and all those horrible things, which I have not ever found to be true.
Right, same here.
I try to do the smartest stuff I possibly can, and I've had more success than I ever expected. Now, I think a big part of that is I'm not at the level of smart where I can lose people. Having my level of intelligence, I can't go over people's heads. But still, why try to go lower than what you've got? I just don't ever see the upside of that. And I also, frankly, don't believe people do it. I believe that cynical sentence. I don't think that the words selling out really mean anything.
Me neither.
I have never really met anyone who tries it. And the only story I know is Captain Beefheart, who supposedly stated he was going to sell out on Safe as Milk and failed miserably. He did a crazy artistic record. Right. So, but of course you can never tell with people like Captain Beefheart.
That's right. That's right. Well, I mean, I've never had anyone like offer me the money up front to suck is the thing. Yeah. And so I never understood that,
Maybe someday we'll be tested.
Hey, look, I might take it. Like it just never happened to me. Like people complain about so-and-so sold out and stuff. And I always just figured they just made a bad judgment call or were insecure or something. I don't understand the selling part.
But it's also, you've got people like Robert De Niro and Bruce Willis. Robert De Niro, who has done wonderful performances and has also turned in some performances that really were subpar. As a matter of fact, to my eye, the majority of Robert De Niro's stuff is subpar. Then you've got Bruce Willis, who started out in TV and, with the exception of the past 5 years or so, was always coming in with wonderful performances. But it's like Bruce Willis started on TV.
Right.
And Robert De Niro started in New York in the Warhol scene. And once you're in that situation, very hard to move out of it, very hard to move from. And you see that with Billy Joel. Billy Joel, smart, talented, hardworking, but had a hit with Piano Man early on. So he's kind of a radio guy. And the rock snobs are apt to shrug him off. But there's certainly no less quality with Billy Joel than there is with Springsteen.
Well, I don't think people in the United States realize how class-oriented we are. And those are just indications of someone who seems willing to work like in a working class ethic kind of way. And I'd say Billy Joel would be that. Like, I'm willing to show up and do this. The attitude is not an art school attitude. It's like it's very much a working attitude, and I think that is frowned upon. Where someone who is going to shoegaze looks like they don't need it and had enough money or whatever to begin with. It's not really a money thing, but it seems to me always seems to be a class thing.
It's also
Robert De Niro's a higher class.
That horrible lie about genius. You know, you always. I believe that we use the word genius to excuse our own laziness.
Right. I agree with that.
You know, Blood on the Tracks, when Blood on the Tracks first came out, I was very young, and I really believed that Bob Dylan went through a divorce.
Right.
And then that all spilled out onto the guitar. It all spilled out in his words.
Yeah.
And that was his divorce, and that was pure. Yeah. And then it wasn't until the 80s when there started to be rumors about the Bob Dylan notebook of Blood on the Tracks, where he had changed lyrics and stuff. Not full-blown From the Mind of Zeus, but, we see his work. And now that the collection's been sold to that for the museum in Oklahoma, we find out there are 3 or 4 notebooks that are crammed with information, and that the people I know that have photographed them and seen them say that virtually every single word of Blood on the Tracks was changed.
Right.
Every word, moved around everything. 4 notebooks full of that
I believe
record that just came out of his heart full blown because he's a genius for the Mind of Zeus. No, it was a motherfucker sitting down and going, I got stuff to say. I've got to say it clearly and beautifully. And the fact that Bob Dylan shuffles in and looks high and wears the sunglasses protects him from being seen as a hard-working asshole.
Well, that's at the center of really why I was interested in talking to you, because I don't really think about and have never done anything like magic before. But more and more it occurs to me that that really the reason that music works is because the same reason any art form works, I think, is people are gullible, and we are gullible and we want a story. And if you can deliver that effortlessly, then we all get a cookie at the end of it. Like we get a gift for having been gullible. In music, it's time gullibility to me. It's that you're really playing with 3 minutes, and the 3 minutes implies something about a lifetime. But that 3 minutes might be taken up fixating on 2 seconds or a concept or something. And we're willing to go with that. And it seems like in magic, you're willing to go, the audience is willing to go a certain distance. But what makes me interested in magic is that people have to approach it with skepticism.
Have to, or there's no magic.
Right. We don't approach Bob Dylan with skepticism. In fact, we think David Bowie might have actually gone up in a ship to go to Mars or something. We don't care. Like, that's not important to us.
Right. And some of it's very, very deep. I mean, I believe that Sun Ra may have believed he was from Saturn.
Right. Probably so. Yeah. Yeah.
But in David Byrne's book about music, which is brilliant, he talks about how music can allow the singer to be the character in the song,
yeah,
and also be the singer simultaneously.
Right.
And that's a really complicated idea. You know, when Bob Dylan sings Isis, he sings it first person, he's telling a story. And yet, when you watch him do that in Rolling Thunder, you can also see Bob Dylan singing that song. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And in magic, whether you want to do that or not, you have that thrust upon you. And Teller and I acknowledge it in a way that other magicians don't. But even if you don't, it's already there, because you're saying to the audience every second, you're not going to be gullible. You're going to be skeptical. You're going to watch. And you're also saying, I am honestly, sincerely, from my heart telling you that I will be doing things to mislead you.
Yeah.
Which is, in a way, what Bob Dylan's doing when he sings Isis during Rolling Thunder. I'm going to tell you this story of grave robbing, but it might be about something else.
Right.
And one of my pet peeves is that people who I don't think enough about magic will talk about how magic is exploiting mistakes in our perception. Confirmation bias, the fact that if I move something from one hand to the other, you assume it goes there. They say, oh, these are mistakes in our thinking that magic points out to us. Those are not mistakes in our thinking. Those are the best parts of our thinking. What you are doing is you are playing with the shortcuts that serve us so well in our brain.
Right.
You're not playing with the bad things.
Yes.
You're playing with the good things.
I think of jazz records as capturing an event, and rock records as capturing an idea, making a movie. I just started thinking about this amazing thing that Miles Davis said to John Coltrane, where apparently John Coltrane was getting pretty famous and had a huge career of his own, but went back to Miles's band, and he's taken these long solos that were really getting longer and longer, and he bothered to ask Miles, how I jump on this ride, and I'm going, and I see so many things. How do I stop it? Like, how do I bring it all back down and do that? And Miles said, why don't you try taking the horn out your mouth?
Yeah, I know that. I know that quotation, and I think of it all the time.
Me too. I love that.
All the time. Try taking the horn out of your mouth. It's just so great. It is one of the great.
It's so obvious and beautiful. Yeah.
There's one person in the world who could have said that to Coltrane.
That's right. That was him.
Yeah. You're very lucky it wasn't you that tried to say that to Coltrane.
Now, I wouldn't.
Because we'd now be telling the cute little story about how a 4-year-old got a sax rammed up his asshole.
Well, I'm going to take the horn out my mouth now and take a question, because that's part of what we do. There's 2 things I got to do before we both take the horns out of our mouths.
Okay.
And one of them is take a question from the peanut gallery. And so I'm going to get them to roll the tape.
Hi, Ben. John Cuthbert calling from London here. Hope all's well.
Hey,
My
man.
question for you is, when you're performing a song for the 200th time, say, in the same arrangement, do you find there's still space for creativity in the moment? Or is it become more about regurgitating the creative choices you made when you were writing it and first performing it? Cheers. Well, take care.
Yeah, thanks. Well, that's almost what we were talking about anyway. I mean, for me, well, I'd say it's regurgitating it until there are at least one or two people listening to it. And then, if it's a practice, I feel like it's regurgitation. If there's people, I feel like it's communication. So I suppose that I do what it takes to communicate the song. And if that is fucking with it a little bit, it's just sort of intuitive. And I don't think it feels like regurgitation when there are people listening to it, or if I imagine there are people listening to it. That said, we were just talking about how rock musicians, if you're not Bob Dylan, tend to just recreate the album. But I don't really do that because one night I play with an orchestra, have to get it right. Next night I play it by myself, and I might just completely change it. So it's a little different each time. How do you feel, Penn, about that as far as your, I don't know what you call them, routines or pieces that you do? Your tricks.
I've thought a lot about this. I have things, and I may be getting to the area where I am almost unique in that I have done routines maybe 10,000 times, maybe more, maybe 15. Yeah. And having worked with Teller for 46 years, some of the bits we do are really, really old, and some of the bits are brand new. So I get to contrast those. And there is this absolute thing that's pushed upon comedians, improv people, musicians, and actors that you have to be in the moment, you have to be present, you have to be in the room. I disagree with that. I have seen carny performers, because I'm carny trash, my background. I've seen carnival performers who are going on automatic pilot, paying no attention to what they're doing, and it is really, really beautiful. Right. I believe that there is a level you get to when you've done stuff 5,000 times, 3,000 times, that it becomes so automatic that all of that is on automatic pilot. And there's a real person that's there who's not thinking about it. There's a lie about improvisation. If I'm out on stage improvising, which I've been many, many times, musically and comedically, if I'm improvising, let's use comedically, so you're talking, all you're thinking about is finishing that, getting it over the line, making it good, turning it around. You are not aware of the audience. You're trying to save your ass. Mm-hmm. When I'm doing something that I know inside out, I can tell you the speed that the woman in the fourth row is breathing. Mm. I can tell you who touched their forehead, because that's so much a part of me that I'm really in the room. So it ends up being kind of the opposite of what you'd think. Mm-hmm. The more you're improvising, the more you're alone. And the more you're rote, the more you're in the room with the people. Rote, I just always found that fascinating.
Well, that's exactly what Dr. Charles Lim, he's mostly a cochlear implant guy, he's a scientist, and he's been studying the brain a lot and had some really good tests or studies done to show that when you are improvising, when a musician is improvising anyway, that the part of the brain that is the most self-aware does not even shut on. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really interesting. It mirrors what you're saying. Yeah. Is if you were talking about yourself or aware of yourself, there's part of your frontal lobe that would be lighting up. As soon as you start to improvise, if it's really improvisation, not fake improvisation, that part has to shut down. I think that's amazing. And it concurs exactly with what you said, and I haven't heard anyone else say that.
And also what I find really interesting, I bet you've had this happen, is when you completely zone out and you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then you realize that and then have no idea where you are.
Yeah. Well, it's like running down a set of stairs and someone says, could you explain to me what you're doing and how you're doing it? It's good. And you just fall down the stairs.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to make it automatic.
But I've often been on stage going, how long have I been doing this show perfectly while I'm not here?
That's not good. Well, yeah, I love that, everyone talks about those 10,000 hours you have to do. I love how many more than 10,000 hours you have put into any single trick. Like, forget the whole craft. I mean, 10,000 hours is just so far in your...
I've had the, as you say, one to live it, one to experience it. There's a trick that we occasionally still do that Teller was doing before we teamed up, that Teller has been doing for 50 years, is the first trick I saw Teller do. And then he still occasionally does it. It's a trick that was inspired by Houdini, where Teller swallows 100 needles, 6 feet of thread, and ostensibly brings the needles up threaded. Beautiful trick that Teller does silently. And I've had this wonderful viewpoint. I'm not in the trick, so I'm watching from the wings. I've watched Teller do it for 50 years. And he's better now. He's better at it, Yeah. And that is the problem with the whole kind of idea of hack. A guy's been doing that same shit for 30 years. Well, So watch him.
That's right.
Watch him. Yeah. He's been doing the same shit for 30 years. Watch him. He's got little nuances, and we have this wonderful thing where we have some bits we've been doing 45 years and some bits we've been doing 2 weeks. And that's always true in our shows. Yeah. And that's a really, really nice experience. The story I tell about how you get more depth is there's the thing we do on the water tank where Teller's drowning in a tank of water while I'm trying to do a card trick. And there's a moment where he actually starts to drown, and I haven't finished, within the story, and I haven't finished the trick, okay? And I look over at him, right? Now, we first did that trick on Saturday Night Live, and that's a laugh when I look over at him. Really important laugh, I look over at him. And on Saturday Night Live, when I do that look for that laugh, I turn my entire body and look at him, and it gets the laugh. By 5 years later of doing that trick 6 to 8 times a week, I realized playing the Chicago Theater, which is 3,000 seats, filled up, people in the balcony. Now, no IMAG. On Saturday Night Live, there's a close-up of me, and I turn my whole body.
Yeah.
In the Chicago Theater, with people, a fucking mile from me in the back, all I did was think I should look over at Teller then.
Love
and
it.
Barely move my eyes, and a gigantic laugh.
Amazing.
Because
I love that.
Everything I had been doing made it inevitable that I had to look at Teller at that point.
Right.
It was all so tight and so right that the audience was there with me, and it took nothing. And I often, as we get better and better at a bit, I sometimes play with how little can I do here?
Yeah.
Because if I'm doing everything right, it should be nothing.
Right. That makes me, as a musician, I used Leonard Cohen as the example of someone who had to do with less and less vocally. He started off with arguably not a lot. And by the time he's doing some of his best shows towards the end of his life, he's down to like 2 notes, 1 note.
Yeah.
And that is life. That's like you start out with all this dumb energy and you can throw all this muscle at it. But with experience, you should be able to create an environment in which all you have to do is just the intention. I love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that story too.
You want very much to, vaudeville gave us something like Bobby May, who was a great juggler, wrote his 12 minutes when he was 15 years old. And he was doing that 12 minutes when he was 70. That same 12 minutes. when you watched him do that 12 minutes at 70, it was something supernatural.
Mm.
And with television and radio and records, you don't have people doing the same thing over and over again. So the Stones make the same album 5 times in a row with different songs on it.
Yeah.
Instead of doing the same songs. Andy Warhol had this great thing where he said, if they're going to do the same situation comedy every week, why don't they do the exact same situation comedy every week so they can get good at it?
You've seen Little Britain, I guess, the English TV show. It's the same sketch the whole season. They change one little thing about it, but it's absolutely, what the punchline is. And I love that.
I'll have to watch
It's
that.
brilliant. First or second season, you should see this. Hey, I wanted to get, I get all my guests, I don't know if they told you this too, give us a creative exercise if you have to pull it out of your ass. But basically, Professor Jillette should give us a creative exercise for anyone who makes stuff. For 1 week, I will do this every day, something achievable. Yeah. New week's resolution. An exercise.
I would say try to eliminate all the obvious creativity. So whatever you do, pull it down to the absolute dumb skill level. Like if you were doing card tricks, do a perfect false shuffle. But don't allow yourself to do any of the patter, any of the talking, any of that. If you're a juggler, try to do with a straight face, no personality, no making faces. Just do that trick perfectly. And I remember a bass teacher said, play an F blues in first position with one note on each of the beats, no grace notes, no pulls, no hammer-ons. Just play that. And put as much as you can into that with no tricks. Bob Dylan once said that his goal on guitar was to play guitar without any tricks. Right. And as crazy as it sounds, we are trying to do magic without any tricks.
I was going to tell you one more thing before we take the horn out of our mouth, which is a class I was in. It was studying jazz, and it was a guy overseeing sort of a master class of sorts. The bassist was a motherfucker. He was so good. He was the best musician in the crowd by far, and he was playing his ass off. And the teacher, who was just an old jazz musician, who's just gruff and mean as shit. He was just like the movie about the drums. And he went over to the guy with a book and put a book on his head while he was playing, and his tone got better. It was amazing. And the guy's like playing, like all of a sudden he's playing, he can't move, he's got a book on his head, and his tone just like got big. It's just fun. Nothing to that. It's a pleasure to talk to you, man. It's just I could make like 20 podcast talks, books out of the things that you say and the way that you think. And it's just such a breath of fresh air. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure talking to you too, Ben.
Hi, if you're enjoying listening to Lightning Bugs, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps a lot.
Thank you so much for watching Lightning Bugs on YouTube. Check out more episodes and subscribe if you have not already. You can also listen to Lightning Bugs wherever podcasts may be found.